From the perspective of Marissa, age 42, I don't know why I'm telling you this. Maybe because I'm tired of carrying it alone. Maybe because the silence is louder than the storm was that night. My name is Marissa. I'm 42. I teach high school English, I bake when I'm stressed, and I used to believe love was something you could grow old in, like a warm sweater that stretches to fit the years. I've been married to Daniel for 12 years. We met when I was 30, and he was freshly divorced, still raw around the edges. He made me feel wanted, visible, like I was something new in his life, not just a second chapter. He had a son, Jeremy, who was 15 when we met. That boy sat stone-faced at our wedding, dressed in a navy suit too big for his still-growing frame. He didn't speak to me for almost a year. Now, he's 27, living on his own, mostly. But that night, he'd come to stay for the weekend. The storm had knocked out power in his place, and we had the guest room ready. The house creaked in the wind, the kind of storm that rattles you from the inside out. But this isn't about the weather. This is about the way I've slowly disappeared into the wallpaper of my own life. I used to feel sexy with Daniel. I remember this one night early on, I was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing his shirt, cooking eggs at midnight. He walked in, wrapped his arms around me from behind, and kissed the back of my neck. I felt devoured. Desired. Alive. Now, I still cook. I still wear his shirts. But when he comes up behind me, if he comes at all, it feels performative. Like muscle memory. He kisses me on the shoulder and asks if we're low on eggs again. I smile, because it's easier than explaining that I feel like a piece of furniture he used to love but doesn't notice anymore. We still have sex, sometimes. Maybe once a month. Mechanical, half-lit, with the sheets in between us like a wall we can't name. He kisses me like he's ticking a box. I moan quietly, not because I'm swept away, but because I don't want him to feel rejected. It's easier that way, keeping things quiet. Predictable. But it builds. God, it builds. The tension. The loneliness. The quiet ache of being touched and still feeling untouched. A few weeks before that storm, we went to dinner for our anniversary. I wore red, he always liked me in red. Or he used to. He glanced up when I walked out of the bedroom, smiled in that distracted way, and said, "You look nice." Not beautiful. Not sexy. Not even wow. Just nice. During dinner, we talked about taxes. His job. My students. Nothing about us. At one point, I reached across the table to touch his hand. He flinched, just slightly, and picked up his wine glass instead. That tiny movement felt like a slap I didn't know how to respond to. So I said nothing. I laughed at a joke I didn't really hear. I paid the bill. I drove us home in silence. That night, I crawled into bed next to him. I tried to cuddle into his back the way I always used to. He was warm, but not inviting. He didn't move. Just said, "Long day," and turned away. His body was there, but his heart felt buried somewhere else. Somewhere I wasn't allowed to reach anymore. And the worst part? I didn't even cry. I just stared at the ceiling and waited for morning. The exact moment I realized something had changed wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It was small, like most real heartbreak is. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the living room. I pulled one of Daniel's shirts from the basket, the faded gray one he used to wear to bed when we first moved in together. I held it up to my face. I expected his scent. But it smelled like detergent. Like nothing. And I thought, I don't know if he's gone, or if I am. That's when I knew. That's when I started watching myself from outside my body, moving, breathing, teaching, loving, pretending. And that's how I ended up collapsing into Jeremy's arms that stormy night. But not for the reason you think. Marissa, continued Daniel, is a trauma surgeon. He works 12-hour shifts in a city hospital that never really sleeps. Some nights, he comes home smelling like iodine and fatigue, and I greet him at the door with a glass of water and quiet eyes. Other nights, he walks in wired, needing to talk, not about us, but about bullet wounds and chest compressions and babies he couldn't save. I listen, always. But sometimes, I wonder if he even remembers that I bleed too. Just differently. I understand the weight he carries. I really do. I admire it. But sometimes, I resent how it excuses everything else. Like I'm not allowed to have pain because his is louder. It was 2 nights before the storm when the misunderstanding started to bloom into something more. He came home late again, well past midnight. I was half asleep, but I heard the key in the door. I didn't get up. I waited for him to come to me. When he slid into bed, I felt the mattress shift under his weight. He didn't say a word, just pressed up against me from behind, his hands searching under my sleep shirt, his breath heavy against my neck. It wasn't violent. He wasn't cruel. He was just there. Reaching for closeness. Trying, maybe. But I froze. Not because I didn't love him. But because I was starving for something else first. How was your day? A moment of real eye contact. A whisper that said, I see you, Marissa. Instead, I felt like a body he needed to silence his own exhaustion. I didn't push him away. I didn't lean into him either. I just stayed very still, staring at the curtain moving with the wind, while he mistook my stillness for permission. After, he kissed my shoulder. Thanks, baby, he said, like I'd done him a favor. I went to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. That woman? She looked tired. Like she was mouthing the words to a life someone else wrote for her. The next morning, I tried to bring it up, gently. We were in the kitchen. He was making coffee, scrolling through headlines. I stood across from him, holding my mug like a shield. Last night, I said, I felt a little distant. Between us, I mean. He looked up, brow furrowed like I'd spoken in another language. I thought it was nice, he said. We haven't been that close in weeks. That's kind of the point, I said. He put his phone down. You're upset we had sex? I blinked. No. I just wish it felt more like connection, and less like what? Me trying? That hit harder than it should have. He sounded hurt. Defensive. Like love was a transaction and I'd returned it with complaints. He ran a hand through his hair, already graying at the sides. I'm doing my best, Marissa. I work all day, I come home, and I still reach for you. But you don't see me, I said, the words catching in my throat. You touch me, sure. But you haven't seen me in months. That stopped him. For a second, I thought he might actually hear me. But instead, he nodded slowly, picked up his coffee, and walked out of the room. I don't have time for this before work. That was it. No fight. No resolution. Just absence. We didn't talk the rest of the day. He sent a text around 3 p.m. that said, Jeremy's coming by tomorrow. His power's still out. I replied, okay, and nothing more. I busied myself with laundry and lesson plans. I made pasta for dinner. I even set a place for him at the table, though he never came home to eat it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, feeling like I was living inside a ghost story, and I was the ghost. When the storm hit the next night, thunder shaking the windows and lightning peeling across the sky, I didn't even flinch. I just waited for the sound of Jeremy's car pulling into the driveway. I waited for something, anything, to remind me I was still in this world. And when I opened the door and saw him, older now, broader shoulders, that same unreadable face, I felt something shift. Something I wasn't ready for. But something I couldn't ignore. The morning after the storm, Daniel was in an unusually good mood. The power had finally come back on. The house smelled like coffee and wet earth. He was humming in the kitchen, humming. It felt so out of place, like a stranger had slipped into his skin overnight. He'd taken the day off, said something about needing rest after a brutal stretch at the hospital. I watched him slice a banana for his cereal, shirtless, hair damp from the shower. He still looked good, objectively. Strong. Capable. The kind of man who turns heads at the grocery store. But I couldn't look at him without remembering the quiet disconnection of the night before. The way he'd touched me like a checkbox. The way I disappeared into myself. "Morning, babe," he said when he saw me leaning against the doorway. His eyes landed on my bare legs. I was wearing one of his old t-shirts, the hem brushing my thighs. There was a flicker of interest there. I recognized it. I used to crave it. Now it made my skin feel too tight. "Morning," I said, trying to smile. It came out wrong, too polite. Like a receptionist greeting a client. He walked over, wrapped his arms around my waist, and kissed me on the lips, soft, then deeper. I let him. But inside, I tensed. His tongue grazed mine, familiar, practiced. I waited to feel something. A spark. A pull. Anything. But my stomach just clenched, not in anticipation, but confusion. Exhaustion. When he pulled back, he looked pleased. "See? We still got it," he said, with that crooked grin that used to make my knees weak. I nodded. "Yeah." My voice sounded far away. He reached behind me and gave my butt a playful slap, then moved past me to grab the milk. The sound echoed louder in my head than it should have. I flinched, not from pain, just from the casualness of it. I poured coffee with shaking hands. The thing is, I wanted to want him. I wanted to reach across the counter and pull him in by the collar. I wanted to bury my face in his chest and feel safe. I wanted to be touched in a way that made me feel seen, not scanned. But every time he got close, my body sent mixed signals. My skin remembered the nights I'd cried in silence. My heart remembered how often I'd needed a conversation and got a kiss instead. Later that afternoon, we sat on the couch together, watching the news. Jeremy had gone back to his place, the roads clearer now. Daniel reached over and took my hand, absent-mindedly tracing circles on my palm. "What's going on with you lately?" he asked, eyes still on the TV. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "You've been distant. Weird. Like, cold." His tone wasn't cruel, just confused. "I'm just tired," I lied. He looked at me then, really looked. "Is it something I did?" My instinct was to say no. To smooth it over. But instead, I asked, "When was the last time we talked about anything that wasn't bills, work, or dinner plans?" He frowned. "I talk to you every day." "That's not the same." He sat back, annoyed now. "Jesus, Marissa. I kiss you, I hold you, I still try. But nothing I do is ever enough." I bit my lip, hard. The words were clawing their way up my throat, but I didn't know how to shape them without tearing us open. Instead, I stood. "I'm gonna take a bath." He didn't stop me. Just let me walk away, like I'd become another thing he couldn't save. In the bathroom, I sank into the tub, the water too hot, the silence unbearable. I leaned my head back and stared at the ceiling, throat tight with words I couldn't form. And I thought, not for the first time, why does everything have to turn into sex? It was Saturday night, 2 days after the storm. Daniel suggested we reset. That's the word he used. Reset, like we were a router that just needed unplugging. I made a reservation, he said, setting his phone down on the kitchen island. That little bistro in town. Thought we could dress up. Just the two of us. I should have felt grateful. I should have smiled. I should have kissed him and said yes. Instead, I stared at the grocery list I'd been working on, the pen motionless in my hand. Okay, I said. Sure. I wore a navy dress I hadn't touched in over a year. It used to fit better. My arms felt softer, my waist less defined. Daniel didn't say anything when he saw me, just gave a quick nod and a distracted "you look good." I told him he did too. He looked the same, really. That was the problem. The restaurant was dim and cozy, all candlelight and brick walls. We were seated near the window, rain pattering lightly outside. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the weight of it. For a few minutes, it almost felt normal. We talked about the menu. He ordered wine. I made a joke about how I used to hate anchovies, and he laughed. But then the conversation turned. He said, "I've been thinking, maybe we should do a weekend getaway. You know, something fun. Just us. Maybe that'll help." Help what? I asked before I could stop myself. He blinked. Us. This. I took a sip of wine. A vacation won't fix the fact that we don't talk. He set his glass down harder than he meant to. So talk to me now. Say what's really going on. Something in me cracked. Right there, under that flickering candle, between the wine and the noise of the couple laughing behind us, the mask slipped. You want to know what's going on? I said, voice rising. I feel invisible, Daniel. I feel like a doll you take off the shelf once a month, dust off, and then forget again. He blinked, stunned. Where is this coming from? I was breathing fast. My hands trembled. It's coming from the nights you crawl into bed and reach for me without even asking how I am. From all the times you say you're trying but never ask what I need. From feeling like a vending machine you press buttons on and hope something satisfying comes out. People at nearby tables had gone quiet. I could feel eyes turning. Daniel's face went tight. Jesus, Marissa. You're acting like I'm some kind of monster. I'm acting like a woman who's tired of pretending she's okay with being a ghost in her own marriage. Silence. A thick, echoing silence. He stared at me, hurt, angry, confused. So what, you want a divorce? Is that what this is building to? I froze. No, I said, softer. I want to be wanted, differently. I want to be seen. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. I show you love. I touch you. I hold you. And I feel nothing, Daniel, I whispered. That's the worst part. We didn't order food. We left in silence, the rain heavier now. I walked ahead of him to the car. When we got home, I didn't speak. I went upstairs and shut the door behind me. In the bathroom, I sat on the edge of the tub again and tried not to cry. I failed. The sobs came hard and fast, a year's worth of swallowed pain rising to the surface. Downstairs, I heard the low murmur of the TV. That's how he coped, turning up the volume on everything else so he didn't have to hear me. I thought about that stormy night. Jeremy in the doorway, hair wet, holding a bag and a crooked smile. The way I hugged him without thinking. The way I held on too long, just because someone finally felt solid again. I didn't love Jeremy. Not like that. But in that moment, when my knees buckled from too much pretending, and I collapsed into his arms, I wasn't craving sex. I was craving witnessing. Someone to say, "I see you." And now, staring at my puffy face in the mirror, mascara smudged and dress bunched around my thighs, all I could think was, maybe this is what shame feels like. When the emptiness gets so loud, you finally scream, and still, no one really hears you. It's been 17 days since the meltdown at the restaurant. We didn't talk on the drive home that night. We haven't really talked since. The house is quiet now. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the aching kind. The kind that feels like walking through a museum after hours, every room still intact, but haunted by absence. Daniel wakes up before me. He leaves a mug of coffee on the counter, always just how I like it. He doesn't ask how I slept. He doesn't kiss me goodbye. Just a quiet clink of keys, the front door creaking open, and then the hollow space of the day stretching between us. I used to miss him when he was at work. Now, I miss him when he's sitting 6 feet away on the couch. He doesn't hum in the kitchen anymore. He doesn't reach for me at night. Sometimes I catch him staring at his phone longer than usual, like he's waiting for a text that won't come. Or maybe he's avoiding sending one. The other night, I walked past the guest room and saw the door cracked open. Sheets rumpled. A pillow on the floor. He's been sleeping there on and off, I haven't asked when it started. And yet, I miss him. God, I miss him. I miss the way he used to pull me into his lap when I was overthinking something. I miss the smell of his cologne lingering in the hallway. I miss feeling like I could say something dumb or scared or weird and he'd still hold space for it. For me. But something broke between us. Something we both kept bending until it finally snapped. I've tried to imagine what it feels like on his side. How it must feel to try, in the ways he knows how, and still be met with a woman who flinches at his affection. Who cries in restaurants. Who says things like "I feel nothing" and then expects him to stay soft. He's not a villain. He's a man who's exhausted. Who gives all his empathy to strangers bleeding on gurneys and comes home with nothing left for himself, or for me. I'm not blameless. I've made this harder than it had to be. I've punished him for not being fluent in my kind of love, instead of teaching him the language. Last night, I walked into the kitchen after midnight and found him sitting at the table, elbows on his knees, just sitting. No phone. No drink. Just stillness. He looked up when he saw me, eyes tired, like he hadn't slept in days. Neither of us spoke. I wanted to cross the room. I wanted to kneel beside him and put my head on his shoulder. But I didn't know if that would heal us, or just confuse us more. So I turned around and went back upstairs. I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering when exactly the closeness stopped feeling safe. Wondering if it's still possible to get it back. Now it's Sunday afternoon. The rain is back. He's at the grocery store. I'm folding laundry, watching the fabric twist into familiar shapes, his t-shirts, my sweaters, towels we both use but never wash at the same time. My phone buzzes. A text from Jeremy, just checking in. You okay? I stare at it for a long time, then turn the screen over. I walk to the mirror, press my palm flat against the cool glass, and study my reflection. Not just my face, but the parts behind it. The ache. The longing. The woman I've become since I stopped feeling chosen. And then I say it, softly, just to myself, do you want to leave, or do you want to learn how to stay? I don't know the answer yet. But I know the next time Daniel looks at me, I have to decide. The conversation happened on a Thursday. It wasn't planned. There was no candlelit dinner, no dramatic confrontation. Just two people sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, the morning sun making long shadows on the hardwood floor. Daniel poured coffee for both of us, like he always did, but this time, he sat down. Looked at me. And said, I don't think I know how to love you anymore. He wasn't angry. Just tired. Quiet. Like he'd been carrying that sentence around in his mouth for weeks, waiting for it to soften enough to speak without bitterness. I stared at him, heart pounding. "I don't think I know how to let you," I said. That was the most honest thing I'd said in months. We didn't cry. We didn't yell. We just sat there, two worn-down souls realizing that even love, real love, can erode when neglected too long. "I wanted so badly to fix this," he said. "But I think I was fixing it for the version of us that doesn't exist anymore." His words hit like a soft blow. Not violent. Just irreversible. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. He didn't flinch. He just held it, thumb brushing the back of mine. The gesture was simple, but it cracked something in me, not pain this time, but something close to peace. That night, I found him asleep on the couch. His mouth slightly open, a throw blanket haphazardly covering his legs. The TV was still on, some rerun murmuring in the background. I stood there for a long time, arms wrapped around myself. I wanted to climb in beside him, tuck myself into the curve of his body and pretend we were still us. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned down, pressed my lips to his forehead, and whispered, "I did love you. I still do. Just not in the way we need now." He stirred but didn't wake. That was 3 days ago. Today, I packed a weekend bag and booked a cabin outside town. Alone. No dramatic exits. No ultimatums. Just space. For the first time in years, I'm not running away, I'm walking towards something I don't yet understand. Before I left him a note. We tried. We really did. And maybe we'll find each other again, as friends, as different people, as nothing at all. But right now, I need to remember who I am without trying to survive a love that keeps unraveling. And I signed it, Marissa. Not babe. Not wife. Just me. Because sometimes collapse doesn't mean failure. Sometimes, it's just your body telling the truth before your heart can catch up. And that stormy night I collapsed into Jeremy's arms, it wasn't about him. It was about finally letting myself be held, when all I'd done was hold everything in. The storm passed. Now, I'm learning how to stand again. Alone. But not broken. Just, beginning. Have you ever looked back on a version of yourself and wonder how she stayed so quiet for so long? I do that now. A lot. Sometimes I picture myself in that kitchen, standing in silence while Daniel stirred sauce or poured wine, pretending not to notice the ache in my chest. Or in bed, stiff as he wrapped an arm around me, wondering why the weight of his love felt more like a net than a tether. And I want to reach back in time and say, speak. Move. Break the spell before you break yourself. But I didn't know how to. Not then. Here's what I've learned since: desire is not always about sex. It's about presence. About someone noticing when your shoulders sag a little more than usual. About someone asking, "What's weighing on you?" instead of reaching for your body to distract from the question. We think intimacy is about closeness, but it's really about being known. Fully. In the mess, in the silence, in the stupid, raw, unfinished parts. I thought if I kept the peace, if I said yes when I meant maybe, or smiled when I wanted to cry, I could keep the love alive. That I could earn tenderness by being easy to hold. But love built on silence eventually caves in. The night I collapsed into Jeremy's arms, that wasn't the beginning of something forbidden. It was the breaking point of everything I'd been holding in. The grief, the loneliness, the shame of wanting more when what I had looked perfectly fine from the outside. Jeremy just happened to be there. Kind eyes. A dry towel. A heartbeat that felt steady when mine was chaos. And no, nothing happened between us. Nothing physical, anyway. But something real happened. Something that made me realize how far I'd drifted from my own skin. From my own voice. I'm not angry at Daniel. Not anymore. He loved me in the way he was taught to love, through consistency, through touch, through showing up. And that counts for something. It does. But I needed a love that looked me in the eye and asked, "Are you still here?" A love that saw the subtle shifts, the tiredness, the doubt, the dimming, and leaned in, not away. We spent so much time trying to get back to the version of us that used to laugh easily, touch hungrily, believe in forever like it was a birthright. But some seasons end. Not with betrayal. Just with quiet truth. So here I am now. 39. Divorced on paper but still unraveling pieces of that marriage in my mind like an old thread. I go on walks. I read poems that make my chest ache in good ways. I let myself cry in the middle of songs. I send postcards to no one. And sometimes, I still think of Daniel. When I make coffee. When I fold towels. When a certain song plays, I remember the way we used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. I loved him. I probably always will, just not in the way that would have kept us alive. And that's okay. Some loves are meant to hold you together for a chapter. Others are meant to break you open. Both are sacred. Both matter. So if you're listening to this, if you're lying in a bed that feels colder than it used to, or sitting at a dinner table swallowing words you're too afraid to speak, I want you to hear me. It's not selfish to want more. It's not dramatic to say you're lonely. It's not ungrateful to ask for something deeper than duty. Don't wait for it to collapse. Speak. Even if your voice shakes. Even if it means changing everything. Because the scariest truth I ever faced wasn't that I might lose Daniel. It was that I'd already lost myself. Quietly. Slowly. Completely. And now? Now I'm looking for her again. Not all at once. But piece by tender piece. And for the first time in years, I'm finally listening. 7.